For 500 years, every empire that ruled the global economy followed the same four steps: rise, peak, overreach, collapse. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, Britain all had the strongest currencies of their time, all lost them, and now the US dollar stands where they once stood, dominant but trembling. Its share of global reserves is shrinking, rivals are circling, debt is soaring. And history? History is whispering the same warning it gave every empire before this one. The pattern hasn't changed. The only question is, will the ending? Every global currency begins the same way, as a promise backed by innovation, productivity, and trust. But every promise in history has an expiration date. A world reserve currency isn't just money, it's the bloodstream of global trade, the unit every nation uses to settle debts, store value, and measure power. And for over 5 centuries, that title has passed from one empire to the next like a torch carried by collapsing hands. The pattern never changes. First comes rise, innovation and expansion. Then peak, the golden age of confidence and global reach. Then overextension, too many wars, too much credit, too little restraint. And finally collapse, not from conquest, but from mathematics. Because no empire is defeated by its enemies, it's defeated by its own success. When a nation's currency becomes the world's default, it gains unmatched power, but also an invisible timer. Every loan, every alliance, every war stretches the clock forward. And history shows what happens when the ticking stops. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, Britain. Each of them thought they were the exception. Each believed their dominance was permanent. Each watched it fade, slowly, then all at once. The lesson is almost mechanical. Empires don't collapse by surprise. They expire on schedule. Every currency becomes the sun until the orbit breaks. It always starts the same way. A breakthrough. A moment of brilliance that reshapes the world. And then the pattern unfolds. Portugal. In the 1400s, they mastered the seas. New routes, new trade, new wealth. The Portuguese real became the first global reserve currency, accepted across continents. But empire is expensive. Outposts on 4 continents drained the treasury. Rivals closed in. And in 1580, Portugal was absorbed into Spain. It rose. It peaked. It spent. It fell. Spain. They struck silver, literally. From the mountains of Potosi, they minted pieces of 8 that funded an empire. But with silver came inflation, and with empire came debt. Spain defaulted 4 times in a single century. By the mid-1600s, the silver ran thin, and the empire cracked under its own weight. It rose, it peaked, it spent, it fell. The Netherlands. Small in size, vast in ambition. They didn't conquer with swords, they conquered with systems. The Dutch guilder became the lifeblood of global finance. They created stock markets, central, banking, insurance. But power invites conflict. Wars with Britain drained their gold and shattered their edge. By the 1700s, Amsterdam's reign ended. It rose, it peaked, it spent, it fell. Britain. The Industrial Revolution turned the pound sterling into the axis of global trade, backed by gold, protected by empire. London became the financial capital of the world. But 2 world wars changed everything. By 1945, Britain was victorious and bankrupt. At Bretton Woods, the crown was passed. It rose, it peaked, it spent, it fell. 5 empires, 5 currencies. All thought they were different. All thought the pattern didn't apply to them. But history doesn't care about confidence. It only counts debt and time always wins. By 1945, Europe lay in ruins. Factories bombed, economies shattered, empires bankrupt. But across the Atlantic, one nation stood untouched, stronger than ever. America. It had the gold. It had the guns. It had the factories, running at full speed while the rest of the world smouldered. So when 44 nations met at Bretton Woods to rebuild the global financial system, the outcome was clear. The British pound stepped down. The US dollar took its place. Not just as a currency, but as a symbol of post-war order. Tied to gold at $35 an ounce, the dollar became the spine of the international economy. Trade, loans, reserves, all denominated in green. Trust was no longer in metal, it was in America. But in 1971, the gold broke. Nixon suspended convertibility. The dollar was now just paper, but people still needed it. Then came the real masterstroke, oil. In the wake of the 1973 crisis, the US struck a quiet deal with Saudi Arabia. Price your oil in dollars. We'll protect your kingdom. By 1975, every OPEC member had joined, and just like that, the petrodollar was born. Every country needed oil, so every country needed dollars. Artificial demand, real power. By the year 2000, the US dollar wasn't just dominant, it was inevitable. Over 70% of global reserves held in dollars. Nearly every central bank stacked with US treasuries. Every oil contract, every trade invoice, every debt payment. The dollar was the bloodstream of global finance, and it worked until it didn't. Because the story of every reserve currency always sounds strongest, right before the silence. And the story never ends at the peak. At its peak, the dollar felt eternal. But no empire collapses when it's weak. They collapse when they're overconfident and overextended. Today, the signs are no longer subtle. The US debt to GDP ratio has hit 124%. That's not theory, that's math. In the last 2 decades, over $8 trillion has been spent on wars in the Middle East. And the return? Inflation? Fatigue? Deficits? In 2000, 70% of global reserves were held in dollars. Today, just 58%. The number is dropping, quarter by quarter. And other nations? They're not waiting. The BRICS bloc, once a footnote, now includes giants: China, India, Russia, Brazil, and their new allies. They're building alternative payment systems, launching digital currencies, and signing trade deals that bypass the dollar entirely. Even US Treasury bonds, once the safest asset on earth, are seeing foreign demand shrink. From over 50% in 2008 to just 30% in 2025. We've seen this before. Spain defaulted 4 times in 1 century. Britain won the war but lost its financial crown. The Dutch created modern finance and still collapsed under military strain. They all spent too much, borrowed too freely, expanded too far. And now, this isn't new, this is déjà vu. The story is the same, only the flag has changed. The US dollar became the global reserve currency in 1944. That was 81 years ago. And here's the pattern. The average lifespan of every past reserve currency? 95. Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, Britain. Each one lasted between 78 and 220 years, but the arc was always the same. Rise, peak, overreach, decline. So, where are we now? Some say America will pull back, consolidate, adapt, like Britain. Others warn of a sharper snap, like the Dutch. But the most unsettling idea is that this time there may be no single successor. China is building, Saudi Arabia is pivoting, India is rising, the BRICS bloc is expanding, and beneath it all, new systems are taking shape: CBDCs, gold-backed trade zones, digital rails that no longer need New York or Washington. For the first time in 500 years, there may not be one empire to hold the crown. There may not be a crown at all. The age of a single global currency may be closing. And so we ask, is this the end of American dominance, or just the end of a monetary era? Because history doesn't repeat perfectly, but the rhythm always returns. If every empire falls, what makes us think this one won't? If this gave you a new perspective, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe. This is Economic Chronicles, where history exposes the present and the future is written in the lessons we refuse to learn.